I even went over and watched more of the trial. I reviewed the trial because sometimes you're in the moment, you miss things, so I would try to review the trial. So I took everything into account when I made this decision, and basically what it boils down to is I don't think we reach a different verdict if I do a retrial in this case. The jury came back deadlocked. Two main reasons, I think. One of the biggest reasons is, I looked at my case specifically, and I don't think it comes in any differently. A lot of times in a retrial, you have things that didn't come in cleanly. You have things that may have not been gone the way you hoped. This came in as clean as I could have expected. I thought we presented a good case. I presented everything I wanted. All the facts were out there that I had, and it's not like I can change anything. There's no different things that I'm going to be able to change in presenting this case a second time. Something that I missed, something along those lines, and that very often goes into these decisions that, well, we could have done this differently. No case is absolutely perfect, but there are, minor things that may have happened, but there's nothing earth-shattering that's going to change how I present this case or what the facts are that come into the case. The second thing is, and like I said before, I think the jury selection is the biggest thing. I think I said before, and I'll say it again, I think we had a really good jury. These were very conscientious jurors. They were put in a unique situation. We've never had a situation where we've spent a week, almost 5 days, picking a jury where they're sitting alone for days on end before they even start hearing the case. With that being said, they paid attention. They asked good questions. They were engaged that entire time. So this was a really good jury from my perspective, and I can't always say that. The questions they asked were, for the most part, on point when they're going through that process, and they spent a long time in deliberations. So they took this case, gave it the seriousness that it should have gotten. Now, I know some of the numbers have been out there. From my understanding, this did play a role in my decision making. It initially came out as 4-4-4, kind of a split. Or kind of undecided. It did shift to 7-5, I think right about the time we got the first maybe we're hung kind of a response from the jury, and then it moved 10-2 for not guilty. So that does play a role, and so with that being, I took a look at what is our history in our office in terms of trial, and quite frankly, we've had about 15 hung juries in the last 6 years, and we've only retried one in that 6-year period, and that was 11-1 for guilty. And looking at the facts of that case, it was a pretty overwhelming case, and so that's a case where you have a rogue juror. This was not a case with a rogue juror. I think this case, they paid attention, they did a lot to try and arrive at a verdict, and they couldn't arrive at a verdict. So then it goes back to, okay, what do I do differently? What can we do differently the next time we have this jury panel or to select a jury? I looked at what we did in the process. There were 43 strikes for cause. A lot of those were, they couldn't spend the time, they had conflicts, whatever it may be, but out of those, I recognized there were 15 that we said showed a bias to our case, at least in the process right there when we're questioning them. That didn't even reach, we had identified 30 before we even started selecting a jury of what I would term problematic jurors that I could say, geez, they're going to be a problem if we get them on the panel. They didn't make it into the jury box. So we then used 10 of our 12 peremptory challenges. I talked about this earlier where we cleaned out people that after they came forward and for whatever reason, for a variety of reasons, some of which had ties with law enforcement, that we did everything we could. I can't eliminate everybody that has ties to law enforcement, because I've heard that out there is that, well, there's people on there that had ties to law enforcement. You're not going to eliminate everybody. That's not possible. So that's always going to be a factor. So what it boils down to is, I put the best case I could forward. When I tried this case, I did the best I could. I did everything I could. The jury couldn't reach a verdict. I still stand by the decision. I have, been involved in a number of officer-involved shooting cases or use of force cases. I've cleared most of them. This is one I thought should go to a jury. Have a jury decide based on, there's a substantial question of the reasonableness of his actions based on the totality of circumstances. We argued that, and the jury, a very good jury, was not able to reach a verdict. So I just don't see how, when you do your best you can, it comes in as good as you can. Generally, it's going to go worse the second time around, and I just don't see us being able to reach a verdict. I think you'll have the same, even if maybe we get some people on our on our side more in terms of, I think we'll just have the same amount maybe hung on the other side. I just don't see a place where we get 12 people to agree. This has split the community. I've heard over the last 2 weeks, people passionately on both sides, calling me, emailing me, advocating for and against a retrial. So that didn't play a role. I got to make this decision on my own. And looking at looking at everything I had, looking at the facts, quite frankly, I felt there was not a basis to be able to retry this case and have a verdict at the end. So I made the decision to not do that.
Can you talk about the message this sends to the community?
Yeah, I don't know if there's any message. I'm not big on messages sending to the community. I mean, I think we try and make our decisions based on the facts and analysis, and in every case. I mean, I don't think this is, something that I'm trying to send a message by, charging them or not charging them. I made this decision based on the facts, based on the law, and what I thought I could prove. Like I said, I thought it went as good as it could have, but the jury, it's always a jury decision, and you never know what the jury's going to do. But based on what I had, we had a very good jury, and I just don't see it, coming to a different conclusion. So I don't know if there's a message there. It's, I think to some extent the system works. I think this is a split community on this issue, and but I still trust in the jury system, and sometimes this happens.